In the new era of enterprise transformation, artificial intelligence sits at the very center of ambition and anxiety. It promises exponential value, yet its power is often locked behind layers of technical complexity, legacy systems, fragmented data, and sprawling architectures. As organizations race to embed intelligence into their digital core, the question is shifting from how do we adopt AI to how do we enable AI simply and securely at scale. In this episode of InfinitLoop, we dig into the real work of making AI frictionless, simplifying infrastructure, rethinking cloud and edge strategies, streamlining the journey from data to decision, and building robust, observable, policy-driven environment where innovation can flourish. Joining us is Pramod Bhandiwad, Head AI and Software Development at Sify Technologies. Thank you for being there on the show, sir. Moving on, I want to actually focus on the challenges bit first because that is what all our audience wants to know.
Right.
So, in your point of view, what are the current challenges that CIOs are facing when trying to adopt AI in large-scale organizations?
Right. So I think the common misconception is CIOs don't have access to GPUs, right? So that's not the case. There are GPUs available. But there are other challenges, and the challenges could be nuanced to certain verticals. But broadly, right, what challenges they face is on the infrastructure fragmentation, right? Let's take, for example, a manufacturing use case. There's a lot of data that is getting generated within the manufacturing plants. So you need real-time inference, right? You need real-time inference. That means you need to have a GPU infrastructure within the plant. And then there are certain use cases that could be, less latency sensitive, that could go on an edge environment. And then, of course, there is a cloud. So typically, an organization will have this kind of an environment where they have something on-prem, something on the edge, and workloads like training and all could be happening on the cloud.
Sure.
And then, so how do you manage all of this? So now, how do you manage this infrastructure fragmentation? How do you ensure that there are right set of GPUs placed for inferencing? Let's say there are inference optimized GPUs, TPUs that could be positioned. How do you manage all of that? How do you provision workloads across all of these three diverse environments? Right, and that's on the compute, on the infrastructure. Then there's typically legacy. There is legacy infrastructure that is in place. So you have cloud environments where there's a lot of data residing. Now the data is getting generated on the on-premises. How do you get a unified view of the data, right? So data has gravity. That means it tends to stay where it is generated.
Yes.
How do you get this data in a place where you can glean insights from those? So data is a big challenge, right? And then how do you give access? There's governance issues, data quality issues. How do you manage this diverse set of data, streaming data, batch data, all of those, right? So data is a big challenge. So we talked about compute, there's data. When it comes to data, how do you move data, right? What are the network? There's network bottlenecks.
Okay.
How do you take care of optimizing the network so that you don't pay a high bandwidth cost moving data in and around, right? So that is on the network, and all of this leads to cost, right? You're putting something here, you're making sure that data is optimally placed.
Absolutely. I mean, you have briefly touched upon answers for each and every question of mine that are coming next. Now that you've spoken about data, my next question is on that only. So do you want to talk about platforms which actually help you streamline data and then actually help you in streamlining real-time decision making?
Right. I think AI as a buzzword, people want to just get into AI, do some use cases.
Yeah.
But the biggest challenge is availability of data, right? So data is the fuel of AI. So how do you get access to the data? How do you manage this data, right? So we just talked about data being in silos, right? There's data in on-prem, there's data in edge, there's data in SaaS. You're using a lot of SaaS components like service and all. There's data there, there's data in cloud.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for all of the data to get pushed into one big data lake.
Yes.
Right. Although there are lakehouse concepts, there's a distributed data concept, but it's impractical for most organizations because of compliance issues, sovereignty issues, cost issues, access control issues. You can't do that. So I think data should be treated as a product. There are architectures like data mesh, which gives you a unified view without having to collate data in a single centralized location. That still gives you a view of an ability to manage data which is still distributed.
Sure.
Right. So what does it mean, right? So it means that you control data access, you control what data resides where, for sovereignty, for compliance, there's GDPR, there's DPDP, all of that. Right? So that's an absolute must, where you need to make sure that have absolute control on where the data resides, who has access, what level of access they have, and how is data stored, where what level of encryption is enabled, in transit, at rest, those encryption mechanisms, and then you need to deal with data quality issues, data, metadata management, all of that. So I think data is critical, and then you need to have a different approach for managing data with a data mesh kind of an architecture.
So in this answer of yours, you briefly touched upon cyber security, then sovereign governance, etc., etc.
Right.
Do you want to briefly touch upon that?
Absolutely. So I think security, if you take security as a whole, security cannot be an afterthought, right? So you can't build a skyscraper, come to 20 floors, and then think I need to build a fire exit, right? So it's not possible. Security has to be embedded while we are designing this new architecture, while CIOs are envisioning what the AI world will look like. Security has to be embedded right at the beginning. So there are different levels of security. We in a cloud world, we talk about perimeter security, and then there's a tier 1 firewall, tier 2 firewall. When it comes to data, or when it comes to AI workloads, I think security has to start right from, let's say, DevSecOps pipeline. How do you ensure there is no data leak, right? So how do you ensure there is no PII data being exposed, right? So there are a lot of things that that needs to be taken care of. For example, how do you ensure continuous compliance, right? Whether
especially with respect to Indian market,
especially for Indian market, right? So there is. So we talk about a lot of BFSI use cases who are very finicky about their data.
Yes.
So security in terms of data, in terms of not only in terms of data, right? So when it comes to, let's say, an AI model that is put in production, how do you ensure you are protected against prompt injection, data poisoning, sensitive data leaks? That means you need to have a proper observability stack in place, where you measure everything, right? Not just the infrastructure, GPU usage and all
you
the layers, everything, right? Whether what was my response to a prompt, whether I have leak sensitive data, whether the model is hallucinating, whether there is a drift in data. All of these are important considerations to make sure that my entire AI, MLOps, LLMOps pipeline is behaving in the way I would want without compromising on security.
Sure. I mean, I was just talking to a CIO before this. He was talking about data breach. You briefly mentioned BFSI.
Yeah.
He was actually talking about manufacturing, and that too in CPG.
Okay.
Which is like a major concern. I mean, initially in earlier days, data breach or data compliance, etc., was just focusing on BFSI as an industry.
Correct.
But now it's just everywhere.
Absolutely, it is industry agnostic. I think security is like I said, right? It cannot be bolted on. It has to be built into every layer of the architecture that we are just discussing for the AI workloads.
Sure. So any thoughts on automation for AI management within the organization?
I think it's a no-brainer that without automation, this whole thing will fall apart, right? So we just talked about the infrastructure sprawl. We talked about data sprawl, and then we talked about having certain workload placement, because in order to solve the infrastructure problem, the cost performance problems, you need to have workloads placed accordingly, right? For, like I said, real-time use cases, real-time inference use cases should have access to GPUs within the premises. So without automation, how do you manage all of this, right? How do you provision a workload where it has to be? How do you auto scale? Right? How do you manage security? How do you manage cost? Right? So without automation, without autonomous management, this whole thing becomes very, very complex, and it is a recipe for disaster.
Yes.
If you don't have automation, so you need to have a GitOps in place. You need to have AIOps in place. Use AI. I think today a lot of companies are looking at agents to manage the infrastructure, to manage the cost, to make sure the data pipeline is always optimal, to make sure when there's a drift, the new MLOps pipeline triggers, and where you take care of that gap in the problem, gap in data, and ensure the model is again trained, tuned for all of those. So autonomous management and automation, I think, is absolutely essential.
Sure. Now that we've spoken enough about IT and whatnot, I also want to talk about talent management and adoption of new architecture. Yeah. So one point is adoption of new architecture, and the other point is adoption of new talent also within various business IT teams.
Correct.
So any thoughts over there?
Technology is not the answer, right? So it's not the answer for adoption.
Yes.
I can throw the best of the tools and best of the technology in the architecture, but the adoption requires, in my view, it requires a cultural shift.
Yes.
Right. So there are different business units who are trying to come up with their own set of use cases where they need to measure ROI, they need to experiment quickly. So for all of this to happen, right, you need trained people, right? So learning and certification become a key aspect to ensure the adoption increases within an organization. So once that is there, they need access to easier access to data, easier access to this infrastructure without complicating stuff, right? So CIO cannot build a technical architecture and then retrofit or force fit to them saying, hey, use this. So it needs to be inclusive.
Yeah.
So they need to own their own data, they need to own their own experimentation, they should be rewarded for innovating. The cultural shift needs to happen.
Basically upskilling within the organization.
Upskilling, and then the new ways like hackathon. Okay. Earlier hackathon used to be for coders specifically.
I remember those things, yes.
Right, so now there's a new wave of hackathon where if you have an idea, right, and with the right tool sets, without having a deep technical knowledge of the platform, you can still generate. You can give you can see that idea come to fruit, and you can deploy and you can measure all of that. So that has become possible.
I haven't heard of hackathons in a while. I mean, initially big organizations used to conduct these, but I think it has come down like a little.
I think now with AI replacing coders, at least there's a view that coding will be eliminated, which I don't think is the case. So hackathons has taken a backseat, but given that now there are citizen developers, that everybody is a developer. If you have an idea, you can and with some basic knowledge, you can develop an app, right? So that becomes in my view, I think hackathons will see a new life, like ideathons becoming platforms.
Yes, good terminology, sir. Yes.
So that will come up, and we should, I think, in order to improve or increase the adoption, these things have to be in place in an organization where everybody can come to such an event with an idea and generate, build something, and create fast, fail fast, learn fast.
Correct. So, I was also talking to a healthcare CIO wherein this question is specifically for the student audience that we had, that he said there is C, there is a C++, there is Java, there is Python, and Python is still here and one must know Python and whatnot. So do you want to tell the student community or the Gen Z community that we have that what is it that they are supposed to venture into if they want to fall into AI space?
Nothing has changed, right?
Okay.
You will still need good coders who understand in depth on what they are supposed to build, how they are supposed to build, how it is supposed to be architected. Right. While AI is there, but not today, at least in my view, it cannot build a very complex application. You'll still need
human intervention, of course.
You'll still need human intervention. Human intervention, today, typically people spend a lot of time in writing stubs, in writing test cases, in writing, documentation. All of that can be offloaded. You still need to have good logic in place. You still need to understand the coding principles of irrespective of the language, right? So I think dive deep, focus on that, learn new technologies. In my view, I think the fear of coding not being a profession, I think it's still not, we're still not there. AI is still not there. I don't think AI will ever be there, right? So as AI learns to code, humans will evolve. They will have newer architecture in place. Absolutely.
Survival of the fittest, after all.
Of course, right? So work hard. Code everything and try out all the models.
Me being a marketer, I am learning how to code lately. Imagine.
So what
and that from YouTube.
So there are so many avenues available for students to learn.
Yes.
So I don't think there is any dearth of information out there.
Yeah.
You just need to get your hands dirty, get involved, do something.
Yes. So sir, now that you've led development of AI across multiple diverse organizations, what are your 3 priorities that you look forward to within this organization, or maybe on an individual basis?
No, so I'll talk about from an organization standpoint, right? So specifically I have been part of product organization, or from a service provider point of view, where I've been building platforms.
Yes.
Right. So my key priorities are, how do I ensure that my platform enables a customer to solve their real use cases. So today there's a lot of experimentation that is happening without a proper ROI in place. So there's a lot of people who struggle to come up with saying, hey, I have this data, I have this idea, what do I do? How do I actually build that
there's
stuff?
No inference out of it.
Correct. So I think that I want to bridge that gap through, let's say, a ready-made blueprint, through agents that you can subscribe to, through a low-code, no-code platform that, hey, just drag, drop, deploy, test, measure.
Yes.
So those are some of the immediate priorities that I have, where where we want to make it easy for people to use AI without having to spend a lot of time understanding what the platform is, how do I without having to go through a steep learning curve, right? So that is one thing. The other is, for every vertical, what are those starter kits that I can provide, which will enable you to focus on the core idea, not on other models. For example, let's say in one of the banking use cases that we were recently discussing with a large bank. So one of the use cases they were saying is, hey, if a customer says, I made a UPI payment but it didn't go through.
Yeah.
So that's a typical use case, and there are people who now look at what was the transaction history. They go to the aggregator, go to the source, look at all the statements, and then figure out where that request has to be routed.
Okay.
Right. So now you want to automate this, right? So in order to automate this, there are different models that will be required. First, when a request comes in, you need a named entity recognition kind of a model where it says, hey, who was the user, what was the transaction amount, what was the transaction ID, all of those, right? So that is one model that will be used. Then you need to summarize. There's a summarization model, right? And then there are, I can think of 5 or 6 different models that need to be chained together for this use case to be deployed.
Okay.
Now, can I plug out those generic use cases and provide those as ready to consume models where you just click and drag here? So that is how you improve the, or let's say citizen developers to come and use the platform, right?
Okay.
So that's what we want to, that's one of the focus areas that we have from a platform standpoint.
Okay, so you spoke about GPTs and basically LLMs and SLMs. Okay,
Right.
so how this is my personal question, and I ask this of every other CIO out there. On the accuracy bit, do you think it is 100% accurate?
So it depends, right? So I think today there are certain tasks that an LLM does very well, right? Of course, there are open-ended questions. If you ask, then it will try to give you very generic answers. But for example, coding questions.
Okay.
If you ask a coding question, the code it generates is pretty much accurate. There's no doubt that the code won't run. But then in real-time use case, for example, in this banking use case that we talked about, right? So now you want to assign a reason code for a particular problem.
Okay.
Right, and that reason code is embedded in somewhere in the documentation, in the bank's documentation, in some PDFs or somewhere. Now, whether I can deterministically say that given a description of a user problem and this reason code, can every LLM directly match it without us having to tune? Let's say, if I take a generic LLM and whether it can do that, maybe not, right? It's not accurate in that sense. Similarly, there are models, there are questions on medical field, all of that. Right? So there are inaccuracies, but there are ways to solve that if the scope is closed, right? Where I know the problem statement, I want to apply these models. You can take a model, you can use techniques like LoRa and QLoRa to fine-tune those models, create your own, let's say, an SLM, and then use that SLM for a deterministic output.
Okay.
So you can scope it. There are ways around to improve that, improve the accuracy, depending on the scope of the problem. Right?
Okay.
So there's no one-size-fits-all where a model will solve all the problems.
Yeah. I mean, I can't stop reading on it, but then okay. Last question is, of course, on intelligent innovation. If you could just briefly help us understand the major trends here.
So we'll talk about trends, right? So, the biggest trend and the everybody is talking about is Agentic AI.
Yes.
So
hot topic.
So I think it also relates to the question you asked, right? So on the accuracy. So LLM is like it just gives you answers, generic answers.
Yeah.
That will not solve your problem because that LLM doesn't understand your ecosystem.
Yeah.
Right? Let's say if I want to solve a problem, it has to integrate with my CRM, with my, CMDB and all of that, right? So I'm using certain SaaS products like ServiceNow.
Sure.
I'm using my monitoring tools. So how do you plug in an LLM into this ecosystem? That is where agent comes into picture, right? So agent takes a task, it reasons, it breaks it down into tasks, it uses tools to call each of these components, gathers the information, then summarizes and then gives you output.
Okay.
Right? So that becomes that is absolutely critical that it has access to these tools and all, and that's why I think everybody is so excited about Agentic AI transforming a lot of use cases that we have. Even in our own organization, we are looking at transforming the whole support organization through the use of agents, not necessarily replace but augment the current workforce to have data, to have insights. Whenever there's a ticket coming in, agent does all the stuff, and the L1, L2 can be elevated to an L3 support, right? So they do that. So that's one trend which is in here, and it is going to transform everything that we do.
Yeah.
And then the next step is on the Edge AI. We talked about this, right? Where there are use cases where I need real-time inferencing, security or manufacturing we talked about, where I can't have a latency. It has to be real, like we are talking to each other, right?
Yes.
If I have to be a bot, then I need infrastructure here where it converts this real-time conversation. So Edge AI is going to be key. Edge AI is again, you need to take into consideration what infrastructure I need to put in place. How will I manage? There are inferencing optimized chipsets that are coming, so that will go. That will scale. The broader trend is again sovereign AI.
Okay.
Like every country wants their own models. Every country wants to protect their data, protect their IP. So there's a lot of innovation that is happening to make sure that the sovereign AI is in place. So I think that's broadly security. Security is a trend for AI. I think it is evolving fast. It has to evolve fast. So that's going to be a big field in my view. The challenge that still needs to be solved. I think those are the immediate trends I see. Not quantum, of course.
Yes.
That is going to change the world.
Yeah.
Quantum with AI, right? So I think we should keep an eye out for that as well. Although it's still nascent technology, but people are making good strides there. We should, I think, 3-4 years we will see what it does, and the possibilities are
endless. Yes. One more question I have,
Sure.
And this is definitely the last question. You just said countries, wanting to have that sovereign hand-holding on the database and whatnot. What about India, sir? When is India going to come up with its own LLM? What is happening in Indian space?
Right. I think if you look at what METI is doing here, so they have now I think they have some 30,000, 40,000 GPUs in place. They are encouraging academia, they're encouraging startups to use those GPUs, build our own models. There are few people who already started that. There are guys like Sarvam, Bharat GPT. We have our own Indic languages. Krutrim tried it.
Yes.
Right. So I think very soon India will have a DeepSeek moment where we will have our own models. We are taking the right strides, but I still think there is not enough R&D investment.
Okay.
Government alone cannot push. I think corporates have to increase their R&D budgets. They have to look ahead. I think that's the key.
So maybe in the next 2-3 years we'll have our own GPT
in place.
in place.
I'm pretty sure of that.
Yeah, as in keeping our fingers crossed for that. I mean, our conversation cannot end because my questions won't end, but it was lovely talking to you, sir.
Thank you.
I will see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.